Good morning, welcome to Mums Say Radio, Thursday the 23rd of November. I actually got the date right today, Elaine. So today we're going to be talking to Rachel, who is a survivor of CSE and domestic abuse from Rotherham. So if you remember, we were talking about child sexual exploitation last week. Rachel is joining us live now. Hi, Rachel.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me all right?
I can, yes.
Yeah, okay. I'm just going to tell the listeners just a little bit about the bio that you said to me. All right.
Yep.
Okay, so sorry, I'm just having a little technical issue there. Rachel, are you able to turn the volume down a little bit?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah, no, that's fine. Perfect. Excellent. Okay. So, Rachel, you first met your abuser in 2012. No, you didn't. You met your abuser when you were 12. Is that right? Sorry. Yeah, okay. Do you want to just sort of tell us your story? Tell the listeners, what you went through.
I grew up in a little village in Rotherham. I always compare it to Emmerdale because everybody knew everybody really. Your next door neighbours, where you always called them your aunties and your uncles. I had a really happy childhood, lots of happy childhood memories. I was always quite a practical child. I was never one for used to sit still and do maths, but I loved sports and dancing. And then when I got to the age of 11, I went to comprehensive school, and my granddad, he passed away. And during that transition, I think a lot of people had gone in and settled into the friendships, and I kind of become an outsider with some people, and I started to get bullied. The bullying was quite bad. I tried taking my own life when I was 12-year-old. I didn't want to put the pressure on my mum and dad, especially with my mum grieving for my granddad. I felt like I didn't want to put anything else onto her. And
I just stop you there,
I've then started self-harming.
Can you hear me, Rachel?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm just going to stop you there because it's a little bit muffled. So in a nutshell, so you'd lost your grandfather, is that right?
Yeah.
At the age of 11.
Up to the comprehensive, and a lot of friendship groups had formed at comprehensive. So I had a bit of time off. So when I went back, I was a bit of an outsider.
Right. Okay, yeah.
And I started getting bullied. I tried to take an overdose at 12-year-old. I wrote a suicide note to my mum because I thought everybody would be better off without me, and I didn't want to add any upset and trauma to my mum. I then ended up going to a psychiatrist, and I started building friends. I think my mum and dad were quite glad that I were building friends and I was starting to go out, and that's when I met my first abuser. He was really lovely and charming. He was older than me. He was 16. I told my parents he was 14, and the relationship started from there, really.
So can I just confirm, sorry, so he was 16?
Yes.
Yeah,
my first abuser was 16. He'd just left school. He was quite charming, really, but after a while he'd become quite controlling. Met me from school, wanted to walk me home. The few friends I did build up, their relationships started to build down, so I was kind of solely dependent on him. I entered into a sexual relationship with him a week before my 13th birthday. And then when we went to a party a few months later, the violence had started. He'd started punching and slapping me. And I don't know why I never spoke out about it. I think I always kind of blamed myself. It was my fault. I made him that way. And then we went to a party and he beat me outside the party venue. And another man come up, he was 19, and he kind of become a hero. He saved me from it, and I kind of become a bit obsessed with him. And then I started hanging around with him and his friends. We used to hang about on a local car park. The police used to drive on, see us in these cars with these men. We used to be smoking drugs and drinking, and police would just drive on and drive off, really. We weren't causing a disturbance. We were just sat there just doing what we were doing, so they never really stopped and told us to move on. Then after that, we started going into these flats. There were a lot of older men in these flats, and that's the first time I was raped in one of those flats. I my mum and dad were still happy I was going out. I think they didn't really know what I was doing and what I was up to. They'd never had any reason to distrust me. And I was raped in that flat. And when I went home, I woke up the next morning and he was laid outside of me, and I felt physically sick. I ran home, and I got in the bath and I scrubbed myself. And I remember cutting my arms, my chests, and my legs. And just to try and get that disgustingness out of me, I was petrified to tell my parents, because I'd gone in that flat and they didn't know I was been going in that flat and what I'd been doing in these flats. So I that silenced me. And I didn't want my parents to feel that shame that I felt and that disgust. But we had good times in them flats, and that's the thing about grooming. You're going in there and you're having fun with your friends.
Yeah.
The police used to come round numerous times. The new young girls were going in these flats, and they never entered the flats. On 2 occasions they did, and we just hid in a cupboard. They didn't check. They just walked in kitchen, said keep it quiet, and they went on the way. But there were like groups of 10, like to 20 people in these flats at a time, and there were no carpets. There were just mattresses. And we thought these men were as boyfriends. It was a different kind of attention to what you get from your home life and your family. You felt grown up, and it's just the fun part of it. We thought we were really having a laugh, and we were grown up by drinking and taking drugs.
Yeah.
My school life deteriorated after I was raped. I started becoming vile, really. Um, I was just lashing out at anybody. I then become a bully, really. I made other people's lives hell. I wanted to hurt them like I was feeling. I think my mum and dad just kind of put me down to a stroppy teenager, but I wasn't really that much different at home. I'd have my strops and go to my bedroom, but I was still quite close to my parents, and I
Mm.
still went out. My mum still took us to pictures and cinema, and we still spent family time, but it was like I was leading a double life at times.
Right.
School knew we were having relationships with older men.
School knew, did you say?
Yeah, they knew when I'd gone in and I'd took the morning after pill, because it'd make me quite nauseous. I used to go in school a lot of the time intoxicated. I remember one Christmas party I actually got intoxicated, and I actually got my 13-year-old sister drunk as well. And the school took us both in a hall. She were being sick, and still they didn't phone school and said your daughters are both in school intoxicated. They never let my parents know. I'd tell my mum I were going to school in the morning, and I'd be home for school time, but I weren't. I was just going out and I was smoking drugs, going in these flats and just doing what I wanted. They didn't phone my mum and say, why aren't your daughter been in school? It was as though they didn't want me there, because when I was there, I was causing trouble, and I was awful. I'd walk in a classroom,
Mm.
and they'd send me out, and I'd be like, what you sent me out for? And they said, that's before you start. And I'd swear at them and say, well, I'm going. And I'd just walk off school premises. Nobody ever phoned my mum and said, your daughter's walked off school premises. And lads used to tease us in our class and say, oh, we're too immature for you, because they go out with 19-year-old teachers, 19-year-old. And I remember some at times teachers used to join in conversations and just kind of roll their eyes. They wanted to arrange a prom for us for school. And a lot of girls kicked off because his 19-year-old plus boyfriends couldn't come. So they cancelled prom. And there were just so many. When I'm looking back now as an adult, especially with having a daughter of my own and kind of the work I'm doing now, it baffles me why
Yeah.
they never
Yeah.
phoned my parents and said, we've got concerns your daughter's going out with older men. Because there were men. And I genuinely believe that these men were my boyfriends and they loved and cared for me. But the amount of I used to just go into lessons and I'd either be stoned or I'd be intoxicated, and I was just lashing out. One of my teachers actually said to me, it was the day after once I'd been raped, and he said to me that I'd be on a chat show with 6 different children by 6 different men, and that just confirmed my self-worth to me. I think you have to definitely be very careful which words you use to children.
Mm.
But my abuse went on for 18 years. It kind of become normal. Every partner I met then was really abusive. My children witnessed horrendous abuse that I went through with their father. Um, and it's really mentally damaged my daughter massively. She has flashbacks.
How
Um,
old's your daughter now, Rachel?
she's 17 at the end of the year. She's
17.
become quite
Okay.
recluse. She very
Mm.
rarely leaves the bedroom. We've managed to get her into college. She's doing really well. She's really enjoying it. School, she went to the same school as I did, and I got very frustrated when she was having a panic attack. They'd tell her to get a grip and get into lessons.
Rachel, if we talk about your daughter at school, we're just going to go into a break, but I
Yeah.
want to talk a bit more. We're not going into a break. No, we're not going into a break. Okay. Yeah, okay. So your daughter's attending the same school that you went to.
Both of my children have attended both schools, my junior and my comprehensive school. Both they've gone to the
Do you
same school.
feel confident that the school would now inform you if there was worries and issues with your children?
Well, they informed me when she's got false nails on. I have referred children in myself. I get quite frustrated. No matter what's gone off in Rotherham, my daughter went all the way through comprehensive with no awareness and education around CSE and domestic abuse. I see myself as quite lucky as what happened to me. I managed to access services for my daughter. I've had her put on courses. It's my biggest fear for my daughter to think that abuse is normal. Even though I didn't see it at home, it became my normal.
Mm.
So I'm quite lucky that I've been able to access these services. I think every child should have this. They're doing a bit more around CSE. My son come home a few weeks ago, but my daughter went all the way through that comprehensive school with no relationship education. Nothing around CSE. Any education around my children, I have done it myself. But my son, when they did, they brought Chelsea's Choice, which is a play that is going around schools, and my son, he witnessed that a few weeks ago. But to me, not enough's been done. My son come home a few weeks ago, and he'd done a course how to cross a road in road safety. He's 13. To me, that should have been done in primary school, and
Mm.
it should be more around drugs and gangs and CSE. So many children now, especially boys. I feel boys are massively ignored. I think they focus a lot on girls, but
Yeah,
boys and girls are being used to commit crime, and they're being groomed for crime. And I just, if these kids ain't got a clue and educated how they're meant to realise, a lot of mums think, well, parents think, oh, well, my child's all right. They don't go out on the streets. They're up in the bedroom. Well, most children have got an electronic device. Then paedophiles are in that bedroom with your child, grooming your child online. And no matter what, as my children are quite open with me. They always have been
mm.
a bit too open at times. But they still hold secrets back because they think my mum and dad will tell me off for doing that. So no matter what, a child will still hold things back if they think they're going to get in trouble. And my children, they kind of laugh. They call me psycho at times because I go mad and then I sit down and I say, right, you know, I have gone mad. And then we talk it through. I probably should do it different sometimes, but yeah, it's hard when I know what's out there and what I've been through and trying to protect your children, especially when you've brought a daughter up to be strong and independent and she knows it all. We
Yeah,
do clash at times. And she always says, I'm not you. But I always thought I was a strong, independent child, and abuse can happen to anybody. That's
yeah,
the good thing about perpetrators. They know how to get into a child's mind and how to manipulate the situation into silencing a victim. I didn't speak about my rapes from my childhood up until 2 years ago, and I just thought it were normal. I thought these men were my boyfriends, and it were just what young girls did because it were that normal. There were that many of us doing it. And that's what's kind of shocking because even people in the community, it just become normal that girls were hanging
mm.
about in these flats. Look, I feel quite lucky because my dad found out that I was in these flats, and my dad removed me, and he grounded me, and he put things in place. But I still went on to have abusive relationships, and I still hid that from my parents. And they knew something was going off, but until I admitted something was going off, I think they were quite helpless what they could do to help me.
Rachel, when you were entering these flats and hanging around with these guys, was there any point that you kind of felt that perhaps what was happening wasn't right? And if that's the case, did you kind of ever feel sort of let down by school or by anybody within the authorities?
Looking back, yeah, definitely we're wrong. But my idea of a paedophile was a dirty old man in an anorak. That was my education around paedophiles. And don't talk to strangers who'll give you sweets. I didn't think these men, paedophiles, were nice looking men that dressed well. In the flats there was a lot of heroin, and I generally believe one of the only reasons why I didn't try heroin is because every time I saw them have heroin they were sick, and I had a phobia of being sick, and I honestly think that's the only reason why I didn't go down that road. A lot of these men were introducing heroin to some of these girls, and some of the girls ended up on it. But no, it was fun. Even though I was being raped in that flat, it was fun.
Yeah.
And we felt grown up. And I think if every parent goes back to when they're being 13, 14, every child wants to kind of be accepted into a group and feel grown up. You think something's, as an adult, something so, well, what you wouldn't think's important, it's a massive drama to a teenager. I call my daughter a drama queen at times, because to a teenager it is massive, and I think we just sometimes forget to how we think as we did as children.
Yeah.
I do think I was lucky that my dad got me out of them flats, and he found out when he did. Like I say, it did ground me. Things that went on in them flats after I was
How old were
removed.
you when your dad found out?
I was 15.
15. Okay.
Yeah, so I'd been going in there over a year, and then I started hanging around with people my own age again. And I think once again, my mum and dad were relieved, but I was still in a relationship with an abusive boyfriend who was the same age as me. I think abuse is labelled under different sections. To me, abuse doesn't have labels. Abuse is abuse. I don't think there's enough being done around domestic abuse in children. I was kept in a bus stop for over 2 hours and repeatedly beaten. I had my phone smashed, and it was only my mum had sent a neighbour out because my sister was in bed. I'd not come home at my normal time, and my mum sent a neighbour out to come and find me, and she did. And he kept me in a bus stop and he beat me. She found me, and I went to the police, and the police said, well, sorry, there's not much we can do because domestic abuse in children isn't a thing, really. I know there's a lot changed, but to me, the education's still not there. I don't think the police get it. I think there's still a lot of work to do within South Yorkshire Police. I have a lot of friends contact me with the concerns. You report them into the police, you get a crime reference number, and that's about it, really. I've had a situation with one of my friends this week. Her daughter's threatened to have a throat slit. She's been threatened to be gang raped. She's been called white trash by a group of Asian youths. The police have done nothing about it. To me, that's very concerning that this girl's having threats like this and still nothing's been done. It frustrates me very much.
What would you like to be done? What do you think the police should be doing?
The police still look at it as a life choice, or it's school's problem, it's not a police problem. It's not threats like that. Threatening to slit somebody's throat, that's threats to kill. That isn't a school problem. It was done out of school. The girl's been harassed for weeks on end. The police need to be sending a clear message. It won't be accepted. Definitely. I just don't think they take it serious enough. Definitely not. They are with some things. They have improved, don't get me wrong. I think Rotherham Borough Council have done some amazing work. They are listening to survivors and they are trying to change the way they are working with people. But
Yeah.
police, sorry, I think there's a long way to go. I think they're off quite scot-free after the abuse scandal. definitely.
Yeah. What do you think could happen in schools? Because I agree with you. I don't think that many people are aware of CSE. I don't think that certainly, that many, if you ask many young teenagers or children now what CSE is, they wouldn't be able to tell you. So what should be going on in education?
I think teachers are scared to approach it. I think child sexual exploitation is a scary subject to a lot of people. There was a survey that actually went out in my son's school, and they invited all parents in to do some CSE work when Rotherham abuse scandal first broke. There was one parent that said they wanted to do it. To me, I think a lot of people think it'll never happen to my child. They just see child exploitation victims as people who are in care. It doesn't. Abuse can happen to anybody. To me, I think education should be started around safe relationships at 4-year-old. A lot of people are shocked about that, saying, I don't want my children learning about sex at 4-year-old. We're not learning children how to have sex at 4-year-old. We need to explain to them what's safe, what's not. We all know a lot of abuse starts in the home. Now, if these children are speaking out at school and telling an adult and a professional that something's not right at home, we could be saving some of these children from years of abuse. I think a lot of survivors are willing to go into school and speak to teenagers. Personally, I think it comes better from us. I know myself, if a teacher would have sat down to me and spoke to me about abuse, I know what my answer would have been. But when we had some boxers come into school, and I were kind of in awe at how they'd kind of changed the life around. I don't think the government's putting enough funding into education around even sex education. I don't think enough's been put into schools, but definitely there is some fantastic work being done, don't get me wrong, but there isn't enough in my eyes, especially in Rotherham. To say what's gone off in Rotherham and the funding that's gone into it, there's still a lot of schools not doing enough. And it's still happening. I can drive up to a certain shop in my local area and you see it, and you see girls driving around in cars with these men. And why aren't police stopping them? There's a young girl outside of them. Why aren't these cars being stopped and asking why have you got a young girl sat outside here? So to me, still not enough with everything, to be honest.
So it's almost like it's still kind of being accepted, if that's the right word, that teenagers hanging around with older people is normal, but it's not at all. I know certainly when I was a teenager, we used to hang around with guys with cars, and at that time we thought that was normal.
Yeah, you feel good and you feel grown up, especially as girls. Girls do. It's a known fact. Girls mature faster than boys, and the girls always do. And to me, with the celebrities, a lot of it's quite sexualized now, especially with programs like Love Island and Geordie Shores. To me, they're telling children it's okay to go and have sex on TV and things like that. They're kind of downgrading it. And to me, that's quite worrying, because even though these programs are on at certain times, they're available on catch up all the time, so they can be accessed at any time of day.
Yeah.
I know there's parental locks on these programs, but you can get them online. You can see them anywhere. The internet's a big problem. I think there needs to be more around internet safety. Like I said about my son, he learned how to cross a road. He's 13. He knows how to cross a road. To me, it should be more things in comp, like internet safety. And even porn. Porn's too easy to access. And it becomes normal that these boys think that girls think that rough, violent sex is normal, and it's not. We need to be teaching children what's safe, what's not. And to me, it all comes down to funding. And people need to stand up and say, yeah, we're not scared about speaking about this subject.
What are you doing at the moment? Because you are involved in, I know you've been involved in sort of going around doing lots of conferences. So can you just tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, I go around the UK. I've been speaking with a lot of fostering agencies at the moment, and speaking to professionals and children's charities. I speak for normally around an hour and a half about my experience and what's happened to me, and kind of how each way I was failed by professionals and how my children was failed. Out of a 9-year abusive relationship, social services come to my house once for 10 minutes. I had over 30 visits to hospital trying to end my life. I had a lot of mental health problems. I was referred to mental health services once. I had police
Mm.
at my house just about every weekend over a 2-year period. And my children should have been removed. I had addictions to drink and drugs, and my children suffered massively. They should have been removed. So I go around the UK and I speak about what should have been picked up, and basically just hoping that they hear my story might help them, who they might be working with a child or working with a family, and it might help them look at them in a different way and understand why they didn't leave. Because so many times I get asked, why didn't you leave? Because I thought it was normal. I thought
Mm.
my abuse was normal and that's what happened. And it becomes your normal, and it's very hard to get out of that circle once you're in that abusive relationship. When you've got a household and you've built your life, it's very hard to walk out and leave everything and walk away with nothing. I was quite lucky. I had my dad. My mum passed away 11 years ago, but I had my dad. And my dad's been an amazing support to me, and he was able to buy me a property and kind of move me away from it.
Yeah.
And my dad helped me massively. I think he knew I had drugs and drink problems, so instead of giving me money, he used to bring me nappies and baby wipes and help me that way. But I completely shut down. I wouldn't let anybody in. The only thing I kind of dealt with in my life was drugs and drink, and that was kind of my way. I blocked everything out and kind of put it in a
Mm.
box, really.
Just numbing it all. You did touch upon how you felt let down by authorities, and I was doing some research into the Rotherham cases last night, and from what I've read, it kind of appears that during that period of sort of 1997 to sort of certainly 2010, there does appear to be some element of a bit of a cover up going on, perhaps by counsellors. Are you able to sort of offer any views on that?
Yeah, well, my sister was actually groomed, and my sister's abuse was quite public. My dad used to go down to the police station and said, I know where my daughter is, she was going missing a lot, and she used to go down. And my dad had used to go down and say, I know where she is. They used to tell my dad that he was racist and he needed to get out of the police station or they'd arrest him for wasting police time. My dad used to drive around the streets all hours at night. I had to listen to my mum cry herself to sleep for 2 years because she was that devastated. In the end, they did put her in care to try and protect her, and the authorities allowed her to have a full relationship with him, attend all her social services appointments, which in the end, that was a good thing, and that's how it went against when he was in court, it went against his conviction. But a lot of families were massively failed. It was covered up.
Mm.
And I think by listening to the survivors and the families, really, how they were failed, is the key in moving forward. I know a lot of people are still, like I said earlier, frustrated with South Yorkshire Police, and there don't
Mm.
seem to be enough's being done. With me, I kind of, if, and it sounds really bad, but I know if something's not happening, I know who to go to. There's
Yeah.
parents and families out there that don't. Abuse doesn't only happen in Rotherham. It's happening in every town, village, and city in the UK and in the world. Really, it's a massive problem. CSE destroyed my family. It was like a cancer. It ripped my mum and dad apart, and it's hard.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see you're very upset.
But
Yeah. But
if we
you
don't
really
speak out,
brave.
things won't change and people won't learn. But yeah, my sister's got her own story, and she speaks about her own story, but it does affect families massively,
Yeah. Of
definitely.
course.
And it's quite common. A lot of people, what always frustrates me is a lot of people always blame the parents of the victims. Why have the perpetrator's parents never questioned why was your son or why was your daughter a perpetrator? Why is it always the victims' families? Why weren't you watching your daughters? And it is quite common for siblings to be involved in CSE and abuse because sisters become, well, they are close. But yeah, it just rips families apart. I don't think families get enough support. Yeah, my dad did everything he could, bless him, and a lot of
Yeah,
families did, and they were just ignored. They looked at it as though the children was making that lifestyle choice. We were labelled child prostitutes, as long
yeah,
as well as many other things. I hate that word. How can a child be a prostitute? It just mind boggles. But a lot of girls will call that. We're called
yeah.
that a lot.
I read quite a lot last night about cases where properties have been raided, and young girls, sort of 12, 13, 14, were found naked in bed or just in these properties. And, you know, the older men were there, and yet it was the children that were getting
Yeah, that was my
arrested.
sister. My sister was arrested for having an offensive weapon, and he walked free.
I think I read about your sister actually. I think that's probably what I was going to talk
Yeah,
about a bit
she's
later. I
doing some
didn't know
amazing
it was
work
your
at the
sister.
moment.
Is this that
Um,
she had a baton, didn't she, in her
yeah,
bag? Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And she go missing for long periods of time, and that's what these perpetrators do. They completely brainwash you. They kind of
Mm,
plant a seed in the child's head. My mum and dad found out quite quickly. After 2 days, she was seeing him, and the police just didn't want to know. He was a violent offender, and they just kept banging their head against the wall. It was really frustrating as a family, and that's why we kind of speak out and do all the work we do, because we wouldn't want another family or another child to kind of go through what we've experienced.
your sister is campaigning at the moment to have a change in the law, is that right? So a lot of the child victims at the time were criminalised,
Yes.
and so she's campaigning to have the child criminal convictions
Yeah.
completely wiped off their records.
Which they're doing that not only with girls, they're doing this a lot with boys. They're grooming
Yeah.
boys, obviously, to do drug dealing, armed robberies, and then they get reaps the profits for it, and the child's then left with a life sentence. And
Mm,
if that child then changes the life, they have to then go into a job interview 10 years down the line and say, "Well, you've got an armed robbery on your, or you've got this
mm,
on." Then on your record, then that child has to explain that they were abused as a child, and then they have to go through that abuse again just to get a
mm.
job interview and just to get a job. And it's absolutely madness. To me, it's common sense. She's doing really well with it, and people are listening, which I find absolutely fantastic. And yeah, it should definitely, because people say, oh, well, there's child murderers. We're not asking for these kind of cases to be reviewed. It's on each individual person. But yeah, a child, when they're groomed, they're completely brainwashed, and it's scary how easy it is to manipulate a child. Definitely.
Yeah, it's really disturbing. I'm really concerned, as I was sort of saying to you earlier, about what I found sort of covered up. So I found that in 2005 there was a seminar which was attended by 30 councillors from Rotherham. And at that seminar, they were actually made aware of what had been going on and were told to keep quiet and not to make it sort of public knowledge. You are aware of this, I take it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So just reading here. So one of the councillors, John Turner, so at the time he was a councillor for the Conservatives, he's now a UKIP councillor. He'd also attended that seminar in 2005, and he actually later on requested a meeting with the Rotherham Council leader, Roger Stone, to discuss his worries around CSE. And he was basically told the matters being dealt with and not to talk about it. Again, he wasn't the only counsellor. There are other counsellors that have sort of since come forward and said, yes, we were there, we were told not to mention it. And then when I was looking into this a bit further, there's 6 reports that have been recently published at a cost of £440,000 to Rotherham council taxpayers. And some of the findings from that, so a couple of facts that I've got here, senior council figures tried to cover up theft of 21 laptops containing personal details about child abuse victims and their perpetrators in 2011. Shockingly as well, files belonging to a Home Office researcher investigating CSE in Rotherham were removed by someone with access to key-coded and locked security doors. And some files are also deliberately corrupted. And of course, culprits have never been identified. What are your thoughts sort of surrounding this apparent massive cover-up, and that nobody actually is being made accountable for what happened?
To me, I think it's disgusting that no criminal charges have ever been brought so far to Rotherham. It was covered up. It's clear it was covered up by these people. They failed, these people. To me, when you enter in this profession, I think you should sign some kind of oath that if you're not doing your job, you can get into trouble for it, and you can be charged for it. It's just another insult to survivors after everything they've fought for. It's hard enough fighting for justice. And it's very mentally draining that after the end of all that, you think you've got somewhere and then it's another smacking face. To me, these people are as bad as the perpetrators. They knew and they failed to protect, and they should be criminally charged. And I think that should be across the UK. Anybody who are failing to protect children should be criminally charged, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. And there were young girls repeatedly telling social workers that they were being raped, that they were being abused and trafficked, and nobody was listening at all. And I just, for somebody, I've worked in education for 10 years, and I just can't get that out of my head that nobody did anything.
For so long. And that's why I think a lot of these girls accepted their abuse as normal, because they were kind of led to believe it's what happens, it's normal, deal with it. But a lot of like myself, the only way I dealt with my abuse was drugs and drink, and I felt worthless. And a lot of people think, well, surely your children would have made you clean your act up. Well, I thought my children were better off without me, and that's why I abused drugs the way I did, because you kind of become in your own world. I think mental health is so important in children. I know locally Barnsley, £1 million just being put into mental health, into children's schools. To me, that's amazing. My daughter, like I said, luckily I was able to access some services. But if Rotherham wouldn't have been exposed, would it still be going on? Would it still be being covered up? Yeah, I believe it will. I believe it would. Definitely.
Yeah, it is really sort of something. It's a subject that's only really just sort of coming to light now, and it's only because of the conviction of those 5 men in Rotherham a few years ago.
What I find a shame is it has to be that authorities and police officers are shamed until something gets done. Isn't our children enough to do something and to protect? You went into that job for a reason. Do that job for a reason. If you think a child being abused is normal, you're in the wrong job.
Yeah, absolutely. I did actually ask a representative of Dorset Police to come and speak to us today, but they have been unable to, just because they're purely so busy just working with CSE alone, just in Dorset. So we haven't been able to have that, unfortunately, but perhaps at a later date. Rachel, I want to ask, because you're married now.
Yes.
How long have you been married?
I got married in June this year.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
That's fantastic. So I kind of guess I want to ask, at what point then did you feel sort of perhaps you were in a position to trust a man again?
I had a mental breakdown at 30-year-old, and I kind of met him 2 weeks later.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, and he kind of helped a lot with my recovery. I tested him, I really did. I thought he'd hurt me, so did my children. It was hard for my children, especially my son, to trust. He thought that every man had hurt mummy, like he's
Mm.
seen. Um, but the best friends now, I always liken them to like Joey and Chandler off Friends. They just make me
Yeah.
laugh every day, and the relationship's amazing. He supports everything I do. I've never met a man like him. He's just amazing, and it makes me believe in myself that people can make mistakes and they can move forward. And it kind of builds me up when I'm having a bad day, and makes me believe in myself again and sends me on my way. And then I come back and have another bad day, and he's like, he believes in me, and he's done nothing but care and kind of nurture for us all. And yeah, he's amazing, bless him.
Oh, you sound really lucky to have met somebody that can support you like that. That's really good news. Um, just on another note, um, there's going to be people listening today that perhaps are victims now of CSE or have been victims and have not had the courage to come forward and sort of seek help or say anything. What advice can you give to those people?
Don't be ashamed. Abuse is never your fault. There is good support out there. Just access that support. I know so many people don't want the families knowing. Um, I kind of put all my abuse in a box, and it come to a head later in life. I don't think you can ever suppress it. I think you need to get that support, and just
Mm.
don't be ashamed in speaking out. There's lots of amazing support, even online. If you don't feel ready to go and see somebody, you can pick up the phone, you can speak to somebody online, but don't do it on your own. I tried, because I'm a determined bugger and I never accept help, but accepting help is okay, and it is good, and it will help move you forward and start and rebuild your life. And it's been a hard 4 years, but it's probably been the best 4 years of my life. I'm mentally stronger than I've ever been, um, and I'm really enjoying life. It's nice to smile again and just have fun, and it's nice to just hear laughter more often. Definitely.
Mm. And you look really well. You look good.
Thank you.
What about parents? So again, not only is there, possibly young people listening to the program, or perhaps may listen to the program later on and may want to seek the help. What would you say to parents that perhaps feel that something's going on and they don't know quite how to tackle the issue? They don't know how to protect their children. Again, they don't know who to go to or where to turn. What can they do?
Definitely say always write everything down, write dates and times. If you see cars picking your children up, make a note of that. It sounds daft, but this could help in future secure
Mm.
convictions, and access support. Get in touch with your local services, your local police. If you feel they're not doing enough, keep banging down the door. Um, if you still don't feel enough, contact some charities. There's some great CSE charities.
Mm.
There's some great parent support charities as well. I think PACE is one of those. So keep accessing and keep trying. I think there should be a lot more for families to understand why the children don't leave, and why they don't walk away.
Mm.
A lot of people just think it's, like I said, children in care that are affected by abuse. It
That is
doesn't.
not.
To treat every child as you'd want to your own child treated when dealing with children with abuse. I think that's, and remember what you're saying to these children. Words last longer than a physical injury does.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And what sort of signs should parents and carers and professionals be looking for with regards to children who are victims or at risk of being victims of child sexual exploitation?
There's lots of things really. Some children will be quite secretive. They'll start lying where they're going. Some children will become quite overly sexually. It's a hard word. With their actions, they'll be where they speak and things sexually. That's always one to keep an eye on. If they're hanging around with a new group, if they're coming home intoxicated, changing the behaviour or they're lashing out. Most teenagers, we know myself, I know with my daughter, they change from a lovely kind of bright girl into Kevin the teenager within a matter of
Yeah.
weeks. But just notice any changes. And I think online accounts should be checked. It's so easy for these perpetrators to get into it, even on Xbox Live and things like that.
I think that the issue with that is that young people these days seem to be so much more savvy with technology than perhaps what we do as parents. I wouldn't even know how to turn an Xbox on.
Yeah, same.
So it's how do we overcome that kind of issue? Is there places we can go to get training? Is there do we look on the internet how to
I think local authorities should be putting and schools should be doing. I know some do, but I think it should be compulsory for more education classes around. Because Snapchat, that app is very, very scary. The evidence disappears within seconds. I have a list of CSE codes that I use on with professionals, and just even emojis now where they can talk in code, grooming children about having sex and things. That to me is very scary. Just how easy it is to communicate with a child sexually. But I think definitely schools should be getting parents in and working together. I do need a lot more around technology. I'm absolutely rubbish at it, but my children generally help me when I'm doing certain things.
Yeah.
But I do feel my children are quite open with me, and my children come home and say, "Mum, this is happening and this is happening." But like I said, not every child will, because it is hard to talk about your children with sex. Not everybody wants to do it. So for me, that's why school play a massive role in this part of education. Definitely, they spend more time at school than they do at home most time.
Yeah. What age did were your children sort of aware of what happened to you? When did you sort of start speaking to them about it?
My daughter, well, both of them were around 11. They, like I said, they lived through 8, 9 years with me, with my abuse with my ex-partner. They know what happened to me as a child in bits and bobs. I haven't gone into it in full detail. I don't think they need to know it in full detail. My daughter, she tries and asks me, and I tell her bits. But when she's old enough, maybe I will sit her down. She does want to know. She knows some things happened, but to me, she's not mentally strong enough to know yet. But I always do the education part with them. But we did as a group, we did a national plan, and I gave it to my son when he was 11, and I said, "This is what I think should be happening in schools." I says, "What do you think?" And he was like, "Yeah, it's great, Mum, but boys don't get groomed." I'm like, "Ah!" So that's what I mean. They're still learning all the time. There's still a lot more to do, definitely. But
Yeah.
yeah, they were both around 11. But when I say to him, "I'm going to be doing this, I'm going to be doing that," and I said, your friends might hear things along the way. And my son always says, "I'm proud of you, Mum.
Yeah.
You're helping people so they don't have to see what we did." And to me, it is a credit, bless him. They both are. Where they handle stuff, they are. They've turned out all right. They're getting there.
Oh, bless. So how many sort of conferences are you doing a year?
I've mainly just started doing conferences this year.
Okay.
I did 2 yesterday. I overbooked by accident.
Two.
So I was in Cambridge and Birmingham yesterday doing 2 foster associations. I'm in London tomorrow. I'm in Birmingham next week, and then I'm taking the rest of the year off for family time for Christmas and to run my business. But generally, it's getting to the point where we're doing 2 or 3 a week, which to me is amazing, that people are wanting to learn and they're wanting to speak to us, and they're wanting to understand how the abuse works, because they've not been through it. So to me, it's amazing that so many people are interested and wanting to learn from us. Speaks volumes, I think.
So if anybody wants to sort of book a conference or have one of your colleagues from the conferences sort of come and do a talk, how would they go about getting in contact with you?
I am on Twitter. I don't use that much though, but I am on Twitter. I'm as Rachel S1400. But I'm also on LinkedIn. But I'm also my email address as well. I have an email, but generally it's just through word of mouth. When people hear me speak, they then want to book for themselves and to train the staffs as well. I do generally do it with another survivor from Rotherham. She's still very current what she's going through, because her children are being groomed by her ex into things, so she's still in the justice system and she's still quite current with what she's going through and still the failings she's going through, which is heartbreaking. But the justice system is very complex, especially the court system. Don't even get me started on that one, because that needs a big shake up. Lots of work to be done in there, but it's heartbreaking to see that it's still happening, and these perpetrators that groomed these women are now grooming their children and getting their children into crime and sexual exploitation. She was actually told that because he's his dad, he can't basically groom him, which to me was just mind-blowing, because she said, well, if I was a member of Republic and I reported that, what would you do? And he was like, well, we'd arrest him. So we're just like, to me, it's still not they're not getting it. But he's actually been groomed for crime, which is heartbreaking. And she's her hands are tied. She can't really do much, because every time she goes to the police, it's like hitting her head against a wall. So yeah, still worrying. But yeah, we are putting a training plan together. We launch that next year. I've just qualified for my level 3 training.
Well done.
So yeah, that's us next year's plan. We're going to be doing a big conference next year.
To launch we'd like to hear, when you do that, I'd like to hear more about that. Definitely.
Yeah, that's great. So yeah, I've got a lot of things coming next year, which I'm excited about. I don't like to jinx things, but yeah, definitely. My big one next year for me is to get into schools and speak to these children. Obviously, not speak in depth and scare them off to death, but just to make them aware and educate them that these 19-year-olds aren't the boyfriends, the paedophiles. And I think once children start looking at these men like that, things will start and change. Definitely.
Yeah, we would definitely support you in what you do. Rachel, we're going to let you go now, but I just want to say thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story and talking to me and to our listeners today. I think what you're doing is amazing. I think you're ever so brave. And you look great, as I said earlier.
I'm a bit flushed now.
Bless you. Yeah, as I said, we definitely, let me know, any upcoming projects. Definitely be interested in sort of, supporting you with that. We're quite keen that, we get the CSE awareness out there into schools, parents are understanding it. And that's why I really wanted to talk to you today about this. So yeah, definitely we'll speak again.
Thank you.
And thank you so much. And have a lovely Christmas.
You too.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you so much. And you. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye. Bye.